Jams, jams, jams. Picture books and jams. Welcome, everybody, to PBJamz. Music and picture books. What a perfect sandwich. Squish them all together. What a yummy snack.
Well, good morning or afternoon, whenever you guys are joining us for PBJamz. We are super stoked that you are here with us today. So I'm here with Pat Zietlow Miller and E.E. Trujillo Charlton, or do I have it backwards?
Charlton Trujillo.
I always do it backwards. I'm sorry. Yeah, so they are co-authors of the Lupe Lopez. My tongue is so tangled. You know what? Let me just start over. How about that? That way I will not mess up your name and I will not mess up the questions. Let me write it down so I have it right. It's Charlton Trujillo.
Charlton Trujillo.
Charlton Trujillo.
Charlton Trujillo. Every time I do it, I want to do it backwards for some reason.
Me too.
Charlton Trujillo. All right. You want to rearrange or are you good?
I'm ready to rock and roll, and people just think it's funny that I keep moving everything. Don't worry about it. It'll be part of the shtick.
Love it. Love it. Well, good morning or good afternoon, whenever you guys are joining us for this episode of PBJamz. I am super stoked to welcome you back. It's been a hot minute since we've done this. I took a little break because I had a lot of crazy stuff going on, and then we had some health issues with EE, and so hopefully they're feeling better and back with us. And so I'm so excited to welcome today Charlton Trujillo and Pat Zietlow Miller, who are co-authors of the Lupe Lopez. So far 2 picture books. And so we're going to talk about both of those, but we're going to start off with the first one, which is the one about rules, right? Rockstar rules. So talk to us a little bit about how the inspiration for these books came out and how that kind of started.
Okay, well, E and I have been friends for a really long time, and we had always written our own separate materials. And then one day E said, I have an idea for a picture book. And I said, great, you ought to write it. And they said, well, maybe we could write it together.
And so, she was like, no, I'm a solo act. I don't write with other people. I am way too cool for that.
I was more polite. But so then he sent me a draft of the document, and I read it and I'm like, okay, this is really cool. And I think I still encouraged them to write it on their own. And they said we should do it together. And so we started sending the manuscript back and forth with track changes, and we ended up with, the book.
Well, that's her version of the story.
It's an accurate version.
I mean, it's a version and it's accurate to Pat. No, it's absolutely true. That is exactly how it happened. And the thing was, is it, being Mexican American, and this was loosely based on my childhood. It's definitely something that was in my heart to write.
Yeah.
But coming out of writing middle grade and YA, and then jumping into picture book, I have to admit, I didn't have the confidence. Anyone who thinks writing a picture book is easy, it's something you do between baking cookies or making dinner. I mean, this firsthand. It is a craft. And I told Pat, I said, listen, what did I say?
You said, give me a list of picture books that I absolutely have to read.
20 must reads that you said that I had to read, right? I asked. I said, I will prove to you I'm here to do the work. Because some people might think that Pat kind of pulled me all the way through. And I'm not going to say that we didn't, when we were working together, that there was a lot of learning on my part.
Sure.
But we bring really,
we both had great writing skills.
Yes.
And then they kind of came together to create this thing that neither one of us could have created separately.
No. And it was, tell her about the good, the bad, and the ugly.
The good and the bad and the ugly. Well, okay. The good part is you need to tell the story first about how the book came about, like your kindergarten inspiration.
Okay.
So tell that story.
Okay. True story. So I roll up into kindergarten in Mathis, Texas. Mathis, Texas, population 5,239. 3 stray dogs, a pizza, a Dairy Queen, and Sonic. No McDonald's, everyone. And so I rolled into kindergarten, and I legit had my giant Kiss belt buckle for the band Kiss. If anyone knows that band still. I had the Kiss t-shirt. I had the Kiss medallion. I had the Kiss I had sunglasses, cheap sunglasses from the local gas station, and I had my Kiss 1977 circa right over there lunchbox. Here we go. That I showed up into kindergarten with, Now you can imagine in Mathis, Texas, this was a little frightening to my teachers and my classmates. So I showed up into school, I rolled up really cool, strutted through the halls, and
the teacher said, take off those sunglasses.
Of course.
I stopped completely in my tracks. I turned to
5 years
her,
old.
5 years old, turned to her and said, can't do it. I'm a rock star. And I was sent to the office the first day of school, and so began my education of the difference between home life and kindergarten and how to accommodate the community rules.
And he was convinced in kindergarten that they were going to be the drummer for KISS. That was
Yes.
their career goal.
Which is why I had to look that way.
Right, exactly. And now conversely, when I was in kindergarten in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, I was a rule follower. I didn't do anything to rock the boat. The only time I ever got in trouble in kindergarten was because we had milk for snack time. It was Wisconsin, and I didn't drink my milk fast enough. And the teacher called my mother to complain about this.
Who gets
No
in trouble?
way.
No, I didn't drink my milk fast
Who
enough.
gets in trouble for not drinking their milk fast?
And-
That's so not fair.
And my mom was like, well, don't give her any. She gets plenty of milk at home. So that was the end of that. But yeah,
You know?
we had very different kindergarten experiences.
Yeah.
Love your mom, by the way. I'm her mom's biggest fan, by the way. Like if I haven't met her yet, but when I do,
But there have been phone conversations.
I think I'm gonna collapse like it's the Beatles, or the way people would collapse for Lizzo. Anyway, I'm sorry, off topic, ADHD. Go.
So we wrote the book and we wanted to keep that
Energy.
energy of a kid coming into kindergarten, very confident, sure about who they
Mhm.
were, very musically focused. Lupe is a drummer. And we used some elements of the pencils as drumsticks. And then we have Lupe, realizing that her rock star rules for life don't always match up with kindergarten rules. And how can she balance both while not losing her individual identity?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, you talked about like, what's, where did it come from? Where's the inspiration? And once we were working together, the good, bad, and ugly is that, sure, there were times that we didn't see eye to eye on certain things. I'm
We
like,
might have mildly annoyed each other.
yeah, but you know what though? I came out of that experience. You can look at any interview I've ever done. I said, I became a better person. I became a better human, and I became a better writer. And that's from working with Pat. And so for me, in my heart space, like I get all choked up because like, that's a gift that I get to take now and work with young people because of that experience.
Well, and I have such respect for E as a writer. They use language in just such an amazing way. So it was great to just collaborate and do the first book and then now the second, and there is possibly going to be a third.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. Book 3.
Love it. I love it. That is awesome. I mean, I think when I first started working on writing seriously, because if you're a writer, you write your whole life, right? But when I started seriously working on it, I had always heard, writing is such a solitary thing and whatever. And I had been in the community for just a little while when I realized, what, this is a team sport, forget solitary. And you learn so much from even just critique partners and groups, right? You learn so much from each other. And I love that this was a true collaboration and you guys just learned and grew from each other. That's fabulous. And I think it definitely shows up in the book. That's awesome. And so you kind of really already talked about the writing process and the collaboration. So you guys went back and forth, track changes. And so it was much like we do with our critique partners, probably, right? You were just both working on the same story.
And we had some phone conversations along the way where we argued out some of the finer points.
And we had a retreat through our agency at that time, the Aaron Murphy Literary Agency. And we met there. And I remember being on the floor.
Yes.
And I was
with
telling
the paper
with the
spread
paper
out.
spread out. I was like, no, but listen. And I'm trying to show her what's in my brain because I see things like a movie because I'm a filmmaker. And she goes, yes, but listen. And then it was like that thing. It's like, listen, Linda, you're not listening. And so if you ever saw that Barbara thing, and it was definitely that moment, but we both love music. Little people know that Pat used to in high school.
I sang and I was in this very kind of odd group called Madrigals where you wore these Victorian dresses and you had handbells and you played the bells while you sang.
Awesome.
And the other accompaniment. There are like horribly wonderful yearbook pictures of me in this like long Victorian dress. So,
and for me, I had been a percussionist and played music since I was a young person. So I love music and I've been beating on every single thing, much to the not joy of my teachers all the time since I was a child. So we love music, we love language, and we love characters that can tell a story, but also extend that meaning, because that was the thing about Lupe Lopez is on one level, you're like, well, she's just a Latina or Latin, character or Mexican American character who wants to be a musician. But really and truly what Lupe shows us is that idea that we can all shine and that we can all be rock stars. I mean, anyone who knows Pat knows Be Kind, and knows that we talk a lot about this with kids when we're together and apart, is that to be a rock star, you don't always have to be front and center with a mic. That the way we are rock stars is how we show up for each other.
Yes, and you can be a rock star behind the scene.
And that's really important to us, is that when we're talking to kids, is to take that lesson that it's deeper than just the fact that, it's not just about, it's about the music, and it's also about the music about how we are in our communities,
Yeah. And I want to I'm sorry. Do you have,
No, go ahead.
I want to go back to what you said about, we both like music and the musicality of language. And I think what my high school music experience gave me was an appreciation for sound and language. And when I write picture books, even if they have nothing to do with music, I'm always listening to how does the language sound when I read it out loud. And even prose has a musicality to it if you do it right. And that's kind of how we came up with the idea for Lupe Lopez reading Rockstar. Because in this one, Lupe goes to first grade and she is super psyched, and she thinks, well, I was such a success in kindergarten, which she was. I'm just going to roll in here and I'm going to learn how to read, and I'm going to be a reading rock star and get a star on the Wall of Fame. But
no, jump in, you're going, go girl.
But she starts to learn to read, and she discovers it's harder than she thought, and she's not instantly successful. And okay, I don't even think I've told you the story. I'm the type of person who, if I can't do something well right away, I sometimes give up. Like one time I went golfing and I tried to hit the ball off a tee and I missed like 3 times, and I thought, well, that's it, because I didn't want to look stupid, and Lupe's kind of like that, like she struggles in the groups when one kid makes an unkind comment, and she's like, okay, I'm done. I don't need to read. I'm a rock star. Rock stars don't need to read music. No. But then Lupe starts hearing the musicality of the language and the beat of the language. She starts, that's what helps her put it all together.
As someone who has lived a life of, largely undiagnosed, dyslexia, especially as a child, right? Is it, here I'm an author and a writer, and I told Pat, no one knew. I said, hey, I really struggle with language, and I, in the sense of, is that I can comprehend everything you're telling me, but sometimes I look at the word in the breaking down of the word. You may see epitome, I see epitome. So sometimes it's that part. And so bringing some of that into the book was thinking about the times that I was struggling and how was I breaking down words, right? Musically though, like to the sound of a percussion beat, right? And that's what we're here to talk about, is music. And so for me, that was integral to Lupe's sort of like growth. And also something Pat and I talk a lot about is it's okay to fail.
Oh yeah.
We do it in Pat does it in all of her books, I think, predominantly. I mean,
I fail in all my books.
No, you talk about that it's okay to fail.
Your books just stink.
No. But that idea, even here with Lupe, is that here she is. She's this larger than life character. She started a band in kindergarten. She's absolutely a rock star at Hector P. Garcia Elementary. And then she finds out that reading is harder than she would have thought. But her journey there is to take the things she knows. And I talked and Pat and I with reading teachers, like, how do you reach a kid? We know how dyslexia works in a large way, right? But how do you reach different readers in different ways? And what I would hear is, and Pat and I would talk about this, is that you have to meet them where they are, right? That every reader comes to that journey differently. You're in education, and so a big part of that was thinking, having the teacher be an active part of it in a way that, but not do it for Lupe, but give that clue to say, I see you.
And reading is like music, and you're so good at music.
Yeah. And so when you can find that space in a young person, magical things can happen. And we were hoping that with Lupe coming into the world, that can be part of that journey,
Yeah, I think reading and music go together so beautifully. And there's so much research that shows that music can help kids learn to read. And I taught second grade for 17 years before I went into the music classroom, and I used music all the time because there are kids that reaches them when nothing else will. And it is the rhythm, and it is, just being able to put it into those places where they can get it. It helps with spelling, and it helps with comprehension, and it just helps with everything. The rhyme and the rhythm of, even if it's not a rhyming book per se, nursery rhymes. I mean, it goes all the way back. I could talk about this all day, but I won't.
No, but we can. That's why we're here. But like, for instance, and I know you've read the book, we had here, elotes, mangonados, chamoy, apples, limonadas. Like the sound of it is there's a rhythm. And Pat and I were very conscious about how the words were selected. It's not by accident. We were really thinking about our talks with reading teachers, our times with children, and of course our own personal experiences, and say, how does that fit though into Lupe's world? Because it can't be, it's Lupe's, it belongs to her, So yeah.
Yeah, that's fabulous. So how was it going from the first book to the second? Did your process change, or did you find something that worked in the first book and then it carried over to the second?
Well, do you want to?
No.
I think for me, the second book came a little more easily because you had the world established. You knew Lupe, you were friends, you knew the classroom, we knew her personality a little better. And there were certain elements from book one that carried over into book two, like the Ran Rataplan and, some phrases like, which was kind of a big deal. I mean, and so then it was just like the rest of the plot.
It's like returning to your best friend in some ways. Like, Pat is like my BFF in a lot of ways. I don't know if she'll claim me, but anyway,
I will.
But no, but it is like going home when you get to go to and I hadn't had this experience in a picture book, but it really did come a lot easier. And, Pat obviously is so established in the career, but for me, I felt like between the two books, I was growing and I was ready to kind of like go and run with it. And I felt confident. We will go to a library together or separately, poor Pat when she's with me, and we'll get 50 books or more, picture books, and we'll come home and we don't just read them, we are studying these books, right?
And we read picture books to each other over FaceTime and talk about what works and what doesn't.
But we're also always looking for the musicality of language, and that doesn't, like you just said, it doesn't mean it has to rhyme, right?
It just has to flow.
It has to flow. And we're looking like, ooh, they were so close, but that one word, or here, oh, I see what their staccato here. Like we're looking for that rhythm in language, because I don't know, it's really important to us, right?
I think it's what elevates a really good picture book.
Yeah. Well, you've done so much with lyrical picture books, Pat. So many of yours do have those very lyrical elements. And even though they're not per se rhyming books, many of them, have you done rhyming books?
Yeah, I've got 3 that rhyme, but most of mine don't. And I try not to write in rhyme because it just makes every step of the process harder. But occasionally it comes to me that way and I do it. And I always have this great sense of accomplishment once I do, like Remarkable You rhymes and When I'm With You rhymes and Sharing the Bread.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Everything else is prose.
But I have to say, Pat can't formally announce it, but she wrote a incredibly magical book that we will be hearing about soon. And she sent it to me. And I really got choked up. Like it got me in my heart space. It was like when I read The Rough Patch. Now it's nothing like The Rough Patch, but if you've read The Rough Patch, it gets you in that heart space. And it gets you. And but Pat wrote this book. You know what I'm talking about. And she sent it to me, and I'm like, this has to be in the world. It's like sometimes you read something like De La Peña's book, is it Patchwork?
Yes.
And Love, like both of those, I was like, for me, also like Meg Medina's, and this is, for me, I always loved Tia Isa, Buys a Car, Wants a Car. I love the language, the musicality of the language. But now when Pat dropped me that book, I said, this has to be in the world now. This book is going to reach inside people in a way that maybe none of your other books have. And they've reached, but when you get to be in, even this morning, because we're in Texas at my place. And I said, hey, I want to pick your brain about something. It has nothing to do with you, but I want to talk to you about it and get to have that collaboration moment where you can talk with someone that loves language and story. And I think you see that in the Lupe books, and even in A Girl Can Build Anything, which I know we're not talking about today, but you can definitely see the musicality that we're bringing. And because like you said, that's where you can reach some kids that you can't reach otherwise.
And I'm really proud of how well this second one reads out loud. We've just started reading it out loud, and it reads out loud very well.
And the kids, I love it. The kids always with the Ran Rataplan, the kids find a place where they're like totally committed. And they're part of that narrative then. And then, it's like, it's interesting to see that boys, girls, however young people are identifying, that they find a way that Lupe becomes a part of them. Even you don't have to be Latino or Latinx or Mexican American. you just have to be a child who knows what it feels like to struggle, to need to try.
Like,
yeah.
I spoke at a school in Wisconsin a year or so ago, and the librarian reached out to me afterward and said, she had been reading the first Lupe book to her class,
Mhm.
and a very quiet, very timid girl in the class just fell in love with Lupe and would come back every day and say, "Are we going to read that rock star book?" And she
Oh.
nothing like Lupe on the page, but I
Mm-mm.
think maybe either she aspired to be
Mhm.
or it reached some inner hidden part of her. But that was like one of my favorite stories, is this little girl who just thought Lupe was all that.
And then it came full circle because I was in Wisconsin for a Girl Can Build Anything events that Pat had organized. And that same
Librarian.
teacher librarian came in, and what I said, well, wait. And then Pat paid for it, and we signed. She paid for it because I didn't have any cash on me. She signed. It was my idea though, because that's classic. I'm spending her money. And we signed the book for that specific child and gave it to her. And the teacher wrote back and said, it just that was the thing for this young person.
And we sent her an early copy of the cover of the second Lupe book before it had been released, and so she felt very special because she got to see the cover first. So I haven't met her.
That's
It would
awesome.
be cool to meet her at some point.
It
It
matters.
would be very cool. It does matter. You never know who you're reaching, but I think the wonderful thing about Lupe is that she's a misfit in some ways, and whether that's because you identify as a rock star
Mhm.
or something totally different, I think there's not a kid on the planet that can't identify with that on some level at some
Right.
point. Right? We all feel at some time like I
We don't
don't belong here, and trying to navigate new waters,
Mhm.
that's something that so many kids have to deal with, whether it's, a divorce in their family, and then all of a sudden there's a new environment that they have to adjust to. And that too is the beauty of Lupe, and how all these different layers and levels just help all these different kids to identify, whether they identify because they're a social misfit in some way, or because their life is changing and suddenly they find themselves a misfit in their own life, which they weren't and now they are. But I think those are definitely places where kids can meet Lupe and find some solace in the fact that she learns to navigate that world, and that gives them hope that they can. And that's the beauty of picture books, right? Is that you always end with hope. Like, I can do it because I saw this kid do it, which is also the beauty of A Girl Can Build Anything, which we're not focusing on, but for sure, I mean, there are elements of that. While it's not necessarily doesn't have as many musical connections as Lupe does, it does have that musicality of language, and as all Pat's books do. And obviously you have that penchant as well, E, for that musicality that your percussion brings to that's probably how you hear language and how you think of it, and so it probably comes very naturally for you. But that book is a phenomenal book too. I really enjoyed reading that book as well. So, and that one is out in the world already.
Yeah, I think it's
March.
Okay, yeah, it's lovely too. And so that brings up one of the other questions I wanted to ask you, which is what's coming next. So we know that Pat has a beautiful magical book out in the ether that's going to be coming to us at some point, which is super exciting. And possibly a third Lupe book. Did I hear you say that?
Yep, it's not all locked down, but it'll happen.
Let's just say it's magically going to manifest.
It is, yeah. So that one's coming, and that'll be fun. And then we have one other book we're going to write that may be a follow-up to A Girl Can Build Anything, but that is still.
Yeah, it'll totally be a follow-up. It'll totally be one more. It'll totally be a follow-up. It'll totally be. And then Pat, of course, has her individual projects. I have mine. I'm working on a couple of picture books, a middle grade and YA. And I have a story releasing in A.S. King's anthology, The Collectors, this fall.
It's a great story.
I mean, I couldn't ask to be with a better all-star, group of people who are writing, and so it's beyond a super honor. Yeah, and aside from that, we're just causing trouble and trying to change kids' lives,
Traveling around, promoting Lupe and A Girl Can Build Anything and all the things.
Absolutely. And the thing is that I love that you're focusing on music, in picture books, because music has a way, even when I workshop with kids, it's like we talk about music, we write to music. I say, you know how you broke up with somebody, you got together with somebody, well, not first graders, but that idea, high schoolers or junior high, but that idea, even when the little ones talk about music, it's like, oh, what were you listening to in the car? And, what is that feeling? Because music gets us in that heart space and that feeling space. And I think, we need so much of that in our conversations with young people, because firsthand from being in that second grade classroom, what music can do and how it can reach in. And so to have like a sliver of that in the work that we're doing is just, it allows us to go into those classrooms and after school programs, and sometimes, other kinds of programs that are, where kids are having a hard time, and use Lupe, but also the idea of music as a tool, Yeah.
And before we leave, we never gave a shout out to the illustrator.
Oh yeah,
Lupe.
Joe
Cepeda lives in California, has drums in his illustration studio. He did such a marvelous job of bringing Lupe to life and making this be a book you might want to pick up.
And who is this based on?
He modeled Lupe after his mom as a child.
Oh, how fun.
Wonderful. So yeah.
And Lupe in English, Lupe in Spanish.
Yeah.
So Spanish. Double the pleasure, double the Lupe fun.
Double the language. Yeah.
Yeah. And so anything else you'd like to know?
Gosh, I don't know. This has been so much fun. I mean, I could what else you want to tell me? Let's just such a fun conversation. So many great books available. I'm so excited that Lupe's not done yet. Now, when you so one question that came up when you started with Lupe, did you intend for this to be like a multi-book kind of a thing?
Initially,
not at all.
No.
But I told Pat, I was like, well, Lupe has to be in the Macy's Day Parade.
Yeah, was always Dee's goal.
That's my goal. Is that someday we gotta get her on TV. We gotta get in the Macy's Day Parade. And then she's like, yeah, I'll put all my eggs in that basket. And I'm like, basket, eggs, not a problem.
Yeah.
So, but now it's like the sky's the limit. Lupe could do anything.
Anything could happen.
Anything could happen.
Anything could happen. So keep your eyes out, folks. You may see Lupe yet in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. We've still got time. I love that. I think that, I think for a picture book author, that would be an incredible honor to have your character in the Macy's Parade for sure.
Like Rosie Revere, engineer, is in the Macy's.
Yes.
Ada Twist.
Ada, that's what I meant. Ada Twist.
Yes. Ada Twist scientist. Yes.
It's like, that is awesome.
Well, Lupe is the perfect character to be a Macy's balloon, I gotta say. I mean, I can absolutely see that 100%. She's awesome.
She sees it.
Yeah,
she sees it. She has
I'm
vision.
just a little more cautious,
she has vision. I mean,
but unfortunately, I have no impact on the Macy's Day Parade.
It has to start with one vision and then two. See, and then it goes.
If it ever does become a balloon in the Macy's Day Parade, I want to be one of the people holding the ropes.
Absolutely.
The parade
Wow,
route.
you were brave.
Mm-hmm. Well,
you wrote a book called When You Were Brave, so I guess so.
There you go. It all comes full circle.
It does.
Well, thank you both so much for being here. It's been such a fun conversation. I'm looking forward to all the other things coming out. I've very much enjoyed the ones I've read so far. A Girl Can Build Anything and the Lupe Lopez book. So looking forward to the next one and keeping my eyes peeled for that Macy's balloon one day, maybe.
Thank you for your belief and support.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You guys have a great day and enjoy the rest of your weekend. And for those of you joining us for PBJamz, thanks so much for being here again. I know you've had fun because I've had a blast. I'll see you next time on PBJamz.
Rock out.
PBJamz, yummy books and music. PBJamz, reading, writing, teaching. PBJamz, what a yummy treat. Jamming PBs all the time. PBJamz, jams, jams, jams. Picture books and jams.